I'm 58 years old, and 3 weeks ago I discovered my husband was planning to disappear without me. Not divorce me, not leave after some dramatic fight. I mean erase me slowly, carefully, legally, while sleeping beside me every single night. And I would never have found out if our kitchen sink hadn't started leaking the morning after his business trip. The crazy part is that when I finally uncovered what he'd been hiding, the first thing I felt wasn't anger. It was embarrassment. Because the signs had been sitting in front of me for almost a year, and I kept explaining them away like loyal wives do. My name is Sandra Calloway. I live in Tucson, Arizona. I raised 2 daughters before I ever met Daniel, and for 22 years I believed marrying him was the moment my life finally became safe. I was wrong. What I'm about to tell you started on a Tuesday afternoon with a pipe wrench, a water stain under my sink, and a locked metal cash box duct-taped behind the cabinet wall in my own kitchen. A box my husband never told me existed. Inside it was a prepaid phone, a bank key, and a stack of documents with my signature on them, except I had never signed any of them. At first, I honestly thought it had to be some kind of mistake. Then I opened the phone, and I saw a message sent 2 days earlier that said, "Once the refinance clears, she'll have no claim left to the property." She, not Sandra, not my wife. She, like I was already some problem they were waiting to remove. I remember sitting there on the kitchen floor staring at that message while water dripped slowly from the pipe beside me. Because after 22 years together, after every holiday, every hospital visit, every mortgage payment, every ordinary Tuesday night dinner at our table, my husband had apparently built an entire second life without making a single crack in the one I thought we shared. If you've ever had a moment where your gut told you something was wrong before your mind could explain it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. And if stories like this pull you in, hit like and follow, because what happened next changed the way I look at marriage forever. My name is Sandra Calloway. I'm 58 years old. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I understood the man I had spent the last 22 years loving. Daniel was the kind of husband other people complimented. Calm voice, reliable routines, never forgot birthdays. Every morning he kissed my forehead before leaving for work, and every Sunday he made pancakes while pretending he couldn't cook. That kind of man. The kind that makes you feel foolish for ever doubting him. Which is probably why I ignored the small things for so long. The locked office drawer he suddenly started keeping keys for. The banking app he stopped opening in front of me. The way he began taking business trips that somehow always lasted one extra night longer than planned. None of it felt dramatic enough to question. Not at first. Then Tuesday happened. Daniel had flown to Dallas that morning for a medical sales conference, and around noon I noticed water leaking beneath the kitchen sink. Nothing major, just a slow drip soaking the towels under the cabinet. I grabbed my toolbox, emptied everything out, and crawled inside to tighten the pipe connection. That's when I noticed something strange. The back panel inside the cabinet didn't sit flush against the wall anymore. One corner looked slightly lifted, like it had been removed before. At first I thought it was water damage, but when I pressed against it, the panel shifted inward too easily. My stomach tightened immediately. I pulled harder and the thin wood panel popped loose completely. Behind it was a narrow, hollow space between the cabinet and drywall, and inside that space sat a small black metal cash box wrapped tightly in gray duct tape. I remember just staring at it for a few seconds because nothing about it made sense. Daniel and I had remodeled that kitchen together 11 years ago. I painted those cabinets myself. I knew every inch of that room, or at least I thought I did. The box was heavy, locked, no label, no explanation, just hidden there like something buried. I should have waited. I know that now. But when you find something like that inside your own home, curiosity stops feeling optional. I carried it to the kitchen table, grabbed a screwdriver from my toolbox, and forced the latch open. The sound it made still lives in my head. Inside was a prepaid cell phone, a brass bank key attached to a tag that read First Western Trust, and a thick envelope filled with paperwork. My paperwork, my name, my signature. Except the signatures weren't mine. I knew that instantly. Same handwriting style. Same looping S, same careful finish on the last name. But not mine. Someone had practiced becoming me. And sitting there alone in my kitchen with that envelope in my shaking hands, I realized something that scared me more than the fake signatures ever could. This box wasn't hidden from strangers. It was hidden from me. Before we keep going, tell me in the comments what time it is where you're listening from right now. I read more comments than you probably think. And if this story is pulling you in, don't forget to like the video and subscribe because the next most terrifying of my life. I did not call Daniel. I know some women would have. Some women would have picked up the phone immediately and demanded answers. But the second I saw those signatures, something deep inside me went cold and careful instead of emotional. Because fake signatures are not a misunderstanding. They are preparation. I spread every document across the kitchen table, one page at a time. Refinancing paperwork, property transfer forms, loan disclosures. Some had dates from nearly 6 months earlier. And every single one carried a version of my name written by someone trying very hard to imitate me. The worst part was how close they came. If I had glanced quickly, I might have believed them myself. Then I found the page that made my chest tighten so hard I had to sit down. It was a transfer agreement connected to our house. The house I had spent 11 years paying toward after selling my first home to help Daniel buy it. According to the paperwork sitting in front of me, my ownership percentage had quietly changed during the refinance process last winter. Not removed completely, reduced. Small enough that most people wouldn't notice the legal wording unless they read every line carefully. And suddenly, I remembered the exact night Daniel pushed those refinance papers across the dinner table. I had been exhausted after driving 4 hours to help my oldest daughter move apartments. He told me not to worry about the details because the bank was just updating rates. I signed while eating leftover Chinese food at nearly midnight. I remember laughing because he kept teasing me for yawning through the paperwork. That memory made me physically sick now. I grabbed the prepaid phone next. No passcode. One message thread. That was it. The contact name was saved as CR. The newest message had arrived the night before. Once Friday is done, the account can finally be separated cleanly. Underneath it, Daniel replied, "Good, she still thinks the refinance was routine." I read that message 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, because I did. Every business trip, every locked drawer. Every weird financial conversation over the past year suddenly snapped together like pieces of broken glass. This wasn't an affair hidden behind romance. This was planning. Organized, patient, legal planning. My husband wasn't trying to leave me emotionally. He was trying to leave me financially weak enough that I couldn't fight back once he did. I looked around my kitchen after that. The coffee maker, the magnets on the fridge, the grocery list written in my handwriting. 22 years of ordinary married life sitting quietly around me while underneath it something rotten had been growing for months. I felt humiliated, not because he lied, because he had apparently believed I was easy to fool. Around 5 o'clock, my younger daughter, Emily, called to ask if Daniel had landed safely in Dallas. I almost broke right there, but I kept my voice steady and told her yes. Then after we hung up, I called the one person I trusted to tell me the truth no matter how ugly it was. My sister, Renee. She listened without interrupting while I explained everything. The box. The forged signatures, the messages, the bank key. When I finally stopped talking, there was silence for about 3 seconds before she said something that changed the entire direction of my life. "Sandra, listen to me carefully. Do not let him know you found that box. If you're still with me right now, hit the like button and leave a comment, because what happened the night Daniel came home is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. And honestly, I want to know, at what moment would you have confronted him? Because I waited longer than most people would have. Renee drove to my house the next morning before work carrying 2 large iced coffees and a legal pad. That alone told me how serious this was. My sister does not bring notebooks unless somebody's life is about to change. We sat at my kitchen table for nearly 3 hours going through every document from the cash box, one page at a time. Renee used to work for a family law attorney in Phoenix years ago, and halfway through the paperwork, she stopped reading and looked directly at me with this expression I had never seen on her face before. Not pity, fear. She told me Daniel had most likely been restructuring assets slowly, so that by the time he officially left the marriage, the house and several accounts would already appear legally separated on paper. "This wasn't impulsive, Sandy," she said quietly. "This took planning." Hearing somebody else say it out loud made the room feel smaller somehow. We photographed every document, every signature, every message on the prepaid phone. Then Renee gave me the name of an attorney in downtown Tucson and told me to call immediately. By Friday afternoon, I understood exactly how much danger I had been in financially. The lawyer explained that if Daniel had completed one more transfer connected to the property account, fighting him later could have taken years and cost tens of thousands of dollars. One more signature, one more rushed conversation at the dinner table. That was all it would have taken. Daniel came home Friday night just after 7, carrying takeout from my favorite Mexican restaurant like everything was normal. I still remember how ordinary he looked standing there in the doorway smiling at me. That was the part that hurt the most. Evil would honestly be easier to survive, but Daniel didn't look evil. He looked familiar. He kissed my cheek, set the food on the counter, and started talking about turbulence on the flight while I stood there realizing this man had probably practiced lying to my face for months. We ate dinner in near silence. I could barely swallow. Around 9 o'clock, he poured himself a bourbon and sat down in the living room. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. The bank might send over one final refinance confirmation next week, he said casually. Nothing major. Just sign it whenever it comes. That was it. That was the moment something inside me finally hardened. I stood up slowly, walked into the kitchen, reached inside my purse, and carried the brass bank key back into the living room. Then I placed it gently on the coffee table directly in front of him. I watched the color leave his face instantly. Not confusion. Recognition, pure recognition. For the first time in 22 years, Daniel looked scared of me. Sandra, he started quietly, but I cut him off before he could build another lie. I know about the fake signatures, I said. I know about the transfers, and I know exactly what you were planning to do to me. The room went completely silent after that. No yelling, no dramatic movie scene. Just silence so heavy I could hear the ice shifting inside his glass. And in that silence, my husband finally realized the woman he thought he could outsmart had been paying attention the entire time. Before this story ends, I want you to do something for me. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my position. Would you have confronted him immediately, or would you have stayed quiet long enough to protect yourself first? And if this story has stayed with you emotionally, hit like and follow because endings like this change people. Daniel stared at that brass key for so long I actually thought he might lie again. That was always his talent, calmness, even under pressure. But this time something had cracked. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened before he finally reached for his drink with an unsteady hand. You went through my things, he said quietly, not angry, careful, like he was still searching for a version of this conversation he could control. I almost laughed. 22 years together, and that was his first defense. Not the forged signatures, not the hidden phone, not the bank account, just you went through my things. I found a leaking pipe, I said. The lies were just stored beside it. He looked down after that, really looked down. And for the first time since I met him, Daniel suddenly looked old, not tired, old, like maintaining two lives had finally exhausted him. Then came the part I never expected. He admitted most of it, not emotionally, financially. Cold little pieces of truth dropped across the room one at a time. Yes, he had been moving money. Yes, CR was a financial consultant he met through work. Yes, the refinance had been structured to reduce my legal claim to the property over time. He kept using words like efficient and clean separation as if he were discussing taxes instead of a marriage. But when I asked the one question that actually mattered, he couldn't answer it. When exactly were you planning to tell me? Silence. Just absolute silence, because the truth was obvious now. He wasn't planning to tell me. He was planning to leave after everything was already positioned against me legally. That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. I spent 22 years believing I was loved while this man quietly calculated exits behind my back. The next morning, my attorney met me at First Western Trust. Daniel had no choice anymore. The safe deposit box contained backup copies of every forged document, account information connected to another property in Nevada, and printed emails discussing post-divorce asset protection. Reading those words nearly made me sick. Post-divorce. Like the marriage was already dead while I was still cooking dinners inside it. The legal process took weeks after that. Daniel moved into a furnished apartment across town. My daughters stopped speaking to him for nearly a month. And me. Honestly, the strangest part was how quiet the house became after he left. No lies hiding inside conversations anymore. No strange tension I kept forcing myself not to notice. Just quiet, real quiet. Last Sunday, I repaired the cabinet under the kitchen sink myself, sanded the wood, repainted the panel, sealed the wall back up. And while I worked, I realized something important. Daniel thought the house was the valuable thing he was stealing from me. It was. The valuable thing was me. The woman who survived before him. The woman who noticed the leak. The woman who paid attention just in time. So if you're listening to this and something in your life feels wrong, financially, emotionally, instinctively, please do not ignore yourself just because trusting someone feels easier. Sometimes the smallest crack in your life is the thing that finally lets the truth through. And sometimes saving yourself starts with looking directly at what somebody else hoped you would never see.